So, now we're going to spend a bit of time just reflecting on what those Bible passages say to us, because sometimes when we read the Bible, it's really obvious what God might be saying to us, and sometimes we need to reflect a little bit more together. What I have got, if there are any children who want to do something related to what we're talking about, but stopping and listening is a bit hard, I've got some word searches you can do. Does anyone want a word search to do? Are you really good at those ones, or maybe not the easy one? Not the easy one. Can you go out to all the children and see what's on? Have the easy one, keep that for yourself. And then if there was a hard one, is that all right? You sure? Great. And here's some, I'll give you some pens as well, if people need pens to do it. Right. So, it's always joyful, isn't it, when we come to baptism? And children are such a huge gift, and that's part of why we come and we celebrate the life that God's given them. But aren't they a responsibility as well? Have you ever worried about Logan yet? All the time? I wonder, most parents I know will say that they worry about their children. I wonder what you've worried about your children, whether you've got young children, your children are older and grown up and flown the nest. What do you worry about in life if you're someone who doesn't have children yourself, but sees the state of the world? There's various surveys that say what parents most worry about, and I really don't want to sort of add to the worries you already have by telling you what are some of these. Interestingly, in the States, the top thing is about struggling with mental health, that children might be bullied, but then they rapidly get to the idea that they might get shot. I hope that's not very high up on your concerns at the moment. But surveys over here in this country say people are concerned about the cost of living. We're still very concerned about their mental health. We're concerned about climate change. We're concerned about how children will fit in with their sort of friends and peers and whether they'll be bullied. And then there are bigger issues that people worry about. What about growing up in a world that's full of war and conflict? What about poverty? What about racism? I'm sure that will change throughout Logan's life as to what most concerns us. But most of those things, I think, that we worry about are when we feel as if we're a parent or we're someone just concerned about the world, that things seem to be outside our control. Part of parenting is to give a good environment where children can grow up. But what about the things that we can't fix for them? I don't know about you, what your worst sort of literal nightmares are and your worst bad dreams. How are you getting on with that? Have a look, see if you can find any more children. I think you might have finished your job, but have a look round and check. If you don't know whether a child, just ask them how old they are. What's your worst nightmares about? I have to say, I have ones, my worst dreams, are about when I suddenly find myself helpless. I'm looking for the passport to go on holiday, but can never quite think where it is. Or something bad has happened and I need to get help and my legs suddenly won't work or I can't shout out. I'm told I'm not mad, by the way, having these dreams, that they're very common. I wonder whether it sometimes feels like that in our everyday lives, that things just don't seem to be in our control. Things aren't working as we wish they would. Our lives don't always work as they wish they would. And our Bible readings we've just had are written into a world of confusion where the world is not working the way it should or people expect. But the great news is that they offer us a choice and a solution. Jesus speaks into this and says, "Come to me and I will give you rest or peace." It's an amazing, deceptively simple offer. And yet that's the offer we're celebrating when we bring children to baptism. When Jesus says, "Just come to me," in the middle of all this pressure and worry. And that's the offer that's open to all of us when we look at the world around us and our lives and know we can't fix them all. Let's just look a little bit more at those two readings that we just had from the Bible. We had the second one came from Matthew's Gospel. And Jesus had already been doing lots of teaching to people, he'd been healing people, but they'd started to get confused because Jesus had then sent out his disciples, and instead of saying, "Follow me, go and do what I say and your life will be perfect," he'd been saying to them, "You're not going to have an easy life if you do what I want. You're going to have a hard time if you tell people of God's love for them. It's not what you might expect of God." People had been presuming that God might do something to fix their political system, that he'd sort out the opposition, not that he'd tell them, "Well, you're going to have to learn to live with this difficult life for now." Then, just before our reading in Matthew, John the Baptist, who you may have heard of, is in prison. He came before Jesus, he'd been preaching, he'd been telling people all about God, he was a great prophet, and now he's locked up. So the people have got these two people, John the Baptist and now Jesus, who they realise are speaking the truth and doing powerful things. And yet what is going on for them doesn't seem to fit into their preconceived idea of how God might work or what following God well might look like. But Jesus' answer in the first part of our reading in Matthew is that God is not confusing. It's not God that's confusing. It's sometimes our expectations of God that are confusing. I'm just trying to flick to the passage so I can remind us exactly what he says. He says someone comes and they don't eat or drink, so they're living quite what you might call an ascetic life, what we might see as a holy life. And he says, "Well, we claim they're weird. They've got a demon." And then someone comes who is following God as well, and they say, "Well, I'm not going to fast." And Jesus goes to parties. And they say, "Oh, he can't be from God because he's a friend of tax collectors and sinners." But Jesus is saying, it's not them that is confusing. I wonder if we can relate to that when we expect God will act in certain ways, but he doesn't do what we think he would do. And so we can feel confused as to where God is and what he's doing. Then we look at the letter to St. Paul's letter to the Romans, which was our first reading that we had. And it was read very beautifully to us. But if you try and sort of read it at speed, you get completely tongue-tied about I do the things I want to do, I don't do the things I don't want to do, and keeps on like this. The letter to the Romans is written to a group of Christians who haven't been brought up worshipping God. And the letter what Paul writes can seem quite complicated, but all he's doing is trying to tell them that the good news of Jesus is for everyone, including them. But he talks about this other sort of confusion, where however hard he tries to live a good life, he finds himself not being the person he really wants to be. I think that's something that all parents end up finding themselves doing at times. Not quite being the parent as perfectly as they really have the intention in their heart to be. Even when he knows what is loving and right, he finds himself doing things that aren't so good. I certainly recognise that in my life, and I get really cross with myself and frustrated when I don't live life as well as I would like to. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and I was talking then when people in my job A lot of people like to shout at me and tell me the whole things that most things in life are my fault. Maybe they are, I don't know. But they do. And I said to her, I wish I could sit there and not respond and just somehow find some great wisdom to speak into what's behind this person shouting at me. But so often I find myself being defensive and trying to correct what they're saying and saying, well, actually, this isn't my fault, etc. It's not the way I want to be. Paul recognises that in his life. So what is the solution to this confusion that Jesus finds and that Paul is talking about? What's the solution to who God is and our confusion at how he works? Jesus' answer is really simple, and we had it at the end of our reading in Matthew. He says, come. He says, come to me. Firstly, he says, come like children. Now, there's certainly children running away and not very impressed at coming to anyone at the moment that I can see over here. But I was with some of my godchildren on yesterday morning, and one of them had a little sort of whitlow thing, a little infection thing on his finger, and it was getting really painful, and it needed popping. And so his mother agreed with me this should be popped. So I think, okay, she'll get on with it in a minute. What does she do? No, she comes and gives me a needle to do the popping. But little Barney, I say, Barney, come here. And he just looks at me, and he trots over, and he sits on my lap. Give me your finger. So he gives me my finger. I pop it. He screams. I apologise to him, give him huge hugs, and he carries on. It's never occurred to him in that interaction to question that even though that thing hurt in the middle, that I loved him and that I was doing what was going to do what was best for him. So it didn't make him run away and not come to me next time. He just carried on and played with me for the rest of the morning. Children are good at recognising love and accepting it rather than questioning it and being cynical about it. But we're not always that good as adults, are we? Particularly if we've had lives that have maybe hurt us along the way. We lose that simplicity of response. Yet Jesus tells us that's what we need to do if we want to know all the blessings that God gives, if we want to know his love, then we need to come like little children and recognise that he always has our best interests at heart. So we come with the innocence and simplicity of children. Then we need to come and confess. However hard we try, as Paul said in that letter to the Romans, however hard we try, ultimately we cannot do it on our own. It's really another thing children do, isn't it? If they can't do something, they come and go, help me, I need your help with this. Whereas I don't know if there are any guys out there, if you're building something you've got from IKEA or somewhere else, what does it take for you to say, I really can't do this on my own, can I have help please? Or some faces telling me that's a no-no, admitting that we need help. But we need to be honest with God and confess that actually we're not going to fix our own lives, we're not going to fix this world on our own. And then we need to come and find comfort or calm or peace and rest, is the word Jesus used. He talks about this, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Now, I don't know, we sort of plough fields in different ways to what we used to do. So we don't really think about yokes very much. But a yoke is a thing that was used to hold two cattle together so that together they could pull a plough on the field. So I need a volunteer who's small but thinks they might have some muscles. No, a child type volunteer. They can you can come and help in a minute if you want. Have we got any children who want to just come and help me with a little task? Anyone want to volunteer? There's lots of no's. It's not difficult. Doesn't matter how little you are. Do you want to come and help? Do you want to come and help? Can you come and help? You can bring him on with you. Right. Right, this is a big chair here. Come up here. How old are you? 3. And have you got big, strong muscles? Are you sure? Can you do that and show me? I want you to see. Can you see if you can pick this chair up for me? See if you can do it. Can you do it? Have a try? Why can't you? Is it too big? What do you think? If your mummy helps at the other side, do you think you could do it then? You're not sure? No. This isn't going largely well, is it? No. Would you prefer not to? Should we just give it a little go? See if you can pick it up. Are you going to put your hands on it and pick it up? No. Do you want to go and sit down? Okay. What might have worked is you could see that she wouldn't be able to pick it up on her own. But if she had someone on the other side who took the weight of it, then she would have been able to pick it up. And that's what Jesus is talking about when he says, "You take my yoke upon you." It's like yoke couples in the illustration, the animals together, and you can make the yoke so that one takes the weight of the burden, and so you can use a weaker one as well. And when Jesus says, "Come and take my yoke upon you," he's saying, look, come in partnership with me, because we can carry this burden of life together. It's not an equal yoke. And when we've got God on one side of it, it doesn't mean that the tough stuff goes away, but if we allow him to share it, then he takes the strain of it with us. So what do you do with invitations? Are you good at responding to them? Are you having a party after this? Has everyone responded to your invitations? Good. Do you ever not respond to an invitation? Do you ever think about it before you respond? I'm not going to ask everyone here whether they thought twice before saying yes to your invitations this morning. But I do sometimes. I might get an invitation. It's like, do they really want me? Or have they just invited me because they think I ought to? I've had a great invitation actually this week. So someone said to go and preach at someone's midnight communion service. They're preparing for Christmas. And then they say underneath, we've already asked 10 other priests and they've said no. It's like, right, what do I say to that? Not sure they really want me. But then I worry, what will the dress code be? Will I fit in? Of course, I can know whether I'm going to fit in, and I'm going to know what the dress code is if I make the choice to say yes and I go to the party, and then I can find out. When we need to make a choice whether we're going to accept Jesus' invitation to come to him. And the first part of the choice is to admit that life would be better if we went to the party. If we got away from our tendency to judge everything and be cynical about everything, and make sure we don't miss out on that invitation. We sometimes need to just pray and be honest. And when Jesus comes and says, "Come to me," we just need to say yes and return the invitation and invite him to be the centre of our lives. That is always Jesus' invitation. Come to me. It's there whether we've never chosen to come to him before, whether we've come to him many times, whether we're living out our lives as followers of Jesus and we're finding things tough at the moment. Wherever we're at, that is the invitation, but we still have to make a choice. It is great that we are making a choice this morning, that Lee and Liberty are making a choice to bring Logan to Jesus. But our job is to model that as adults and also make that same choice. Because Jesus says to us, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So as we're coming to celebrate baptism this morning, why not pause? Think about what is concerning you at the moment and allow yourself to hear Jesus' invitation that is for you, and make a choice whether you want to accept it. Amen.